Hey everyone, Lewis aka Spider-Man 991 here with another weekly comic book review. These comics came out the first day of August 2018. As usual, I will talk about these comics from worst to best. Let's get started. Nightwing, number 47. Nightwing and Batgirl find out the connection between the cybervirus worm and Willem Clock. I like this arc for all the scenes with Dick and Babs working together again, but unfortunately everything else in this arc just didn't feel right. I mean, I feel like the whole idea of Nightwing versus the Dark Web just doesn't really feel like a proper Nightwing story. Mainly because I think that Dick Grayson, he doesn't really rely on a lot of gadgets and such as much the other members of the Bat family. Heck, throughout this arc multiple times, Dick even says like he hates technology, and I don't know, this arc just wasn't really a good opening for Ben Percy's run. Hopefully the next arc will be better. Green Arrow, number 43. Green Arrow and Black Canary go after the Citizen, who's kidnapping 1%ers and leaving their fates to online votes. His next target is Oliver Queen. First off, if you're a fan of Black Canary and Arsenal, you'll like this issue because it looks like, since we got a new creative team on board, they're going to have the classic Green Arrow characters back for a little bit. Also, I really enjoyed how Julie and Shauna Benson wrote Oliver Queen when he's in the office versus when he's Green Arrow. Because when he's in the office, Oliver comes off as a sort of carefree billionaire. But then when he gets to be Green Arrow, he's all serious. You understand what he's after and stuff. Also, there's a great callback to the Justice League No Justice series, where which is sort of used as an jumping on point for Oliver to sort of work on his trust issues with Roy. What I'm referring to is how at the end of No Justice, Martian Manhunter gave Green Arrow a box in case the Justice League ever went rogue and someone needed to stop them. And now Oliver's contemplating sharing this information with Roy, because at the start of this issue, Roy still feels like Oliver doesn't trust him. So now Oliver pretty much feels like he should tell Roy in case something happens to him and Roy knows about the box. This issue was a great opener. I would definitely recommend it if you're a Green Arrow fan. AntMan The Wasp, number 4. As a last move to get out of the microverse, Scott and Nadia make physical contact, because in the last issue, Scott was transformed into some sort of antimatter state. And then once they make physical contact, they create some sort of quantum force, and once that resolves, it looks like they're back on Earth. However, that's not the case, because it turns out the Earth they're seeing is actually an illusion created by some sort of lone sentient particle that's trying to merge with them, so to speak. This time, however, as one final move, they decide to just keep enlarging and keep going until finally they reach Earth. And they do, but unfortunately, they're too big to get back on Earth. This issue had a really good moment when Scott realizes that this entire world is fake, and he goes and sees Nadia about it. And in Nadia's sort of perfect reality, her father, Hank Pym, is alive, and she actually gets to talk to him and get to know him. And there's this really sweet scene when Scott's telling Nadia, like, why are you even telling why does it matter they have to tell your dad all your accomplishments? And Nadia replies, so he'll love me. And at that moment, Scott just like breaks. He's like, oh, he like immediately hugs Nadia, which I fully understand. Like, if I was Scott, I would immediately hug Nadia too. And that was just like such a nice bonding moment, I think, for Scott and Nadia. And when you hear Nadia say that she's doing all this just so that her father will love her, it just kind of like gives you like this idea, like, oh, okay, there's like a new chapter we learned about her. But we only got one issue left, and so far, AntMan The Wasp, it's a fun little science fiction story. Again, I say this every time I review this book, but if you expect this series to be like the movie AntMan The Wasp, it's not the same thing. Go-Go Power Rangers, number 12. Future Kimberly reactivates the Grave Sword and remotely uses it to combine with the Power Rangers Megazord in order to defeat Rita's new fleet of monsters. Meanwhile, Future Kimberly visits a young Tommy Oliver and hits him with an arrow, causing Tommy to experience visions of his future as the Green Ranger. After the battle, the team hangs out at the juice bar, where their friend Matt confronts them and says that he knows their secrets, but he wants to hear it from them. The gang refuses to tell him, and thus Matt leaves pissed off. This issue was very good. This is the last issue of Go-Go Power Rangers to tie into Shattered Grid, because I believe this month we've got one more issue of Mighty Morphin, and then we'll get into the huge Shattered Grid finale one-shot. But this opened up with a very fantastic flashback where we see Kimberly in the future infiltrating Lord Dracon's base, fighting off his rangers, until finally Lord Dracon decides to recreate the Dark Sword which had him under his control, but this time create the Dark Bow, which allowed him to control Kimberly and make her his Ranger Slayer. Also, I think the future Kimberly's visit to the younger Tommy Oliver might be a key to how Tommy could come back in the present, because earlier in Shattered Grid, Lord Dracon killed Tommy when he was the Green Ranger. So providing this, and in one of the visions we see Kimberly crying over a deceased Tommy, which means that this might be a way to sort of prevent Tommy's death at the start of Shattered Grid. Also, the stuff with the Ranger's friend Matt, before I read this, I actually went back and was able to borrow some issues of Go-Go Power Rangers, and it's just basically this character Matt was just sort of in there as a reason why most of the team knows Kimberly, and I gotta say I'm not that disappointed with. I gotta say though that Matt's whole arc in this title just really did not interest me. I feel like his whole purpose was just to sort of be like this other friend that was in the group that just didn't get chosen, and that led to him leaving, and I think he's fulfilled his purpose. Like, I don't think we're ever going to see Matt ever again. But still, Go-Go Power Rangers, it's been a pretty interesting read. I'm not so sure how I feel about it and the way it ties into Shattered Grid as a whole, because most of the stuff that I think we see with future Kimberly happens in this title because we haven't seen her in Mighty Morphin. But I think post Shattered Grid we do have an arc featuring future Kimberly, so I think if you're going to read Mighty Morphin Power Rangers after Shattered Grid, then start reading the Go-Go Power Rangers Shattered Grid issues, because that will give you an insight as to who future Kimberly is. Captain America number 2. Captain America is still fighting the clones of Nuke, despite the U.S. government telling him to back off. This series, this issue I'm kind of on the fence about, because it's really well written. It's got a lot of focus on Cap's internal conflicts about how he feels in the post-Hydra aftermath, and we also get some special focus on Steve and Sharon's relationship, which I think is nice, and I think this type of interest in it hasn't really been done before in Captain America titles. However, my problem is just that while it does a good job telling us about like what's going on with Cap, we don't know. It's not really moving forward in terms of a plot. Like, I can only think of like maybe the big bads, the people controlling the Nuke Army, only mentioned once, and that was in the Free Comic Book Day special, and maybe once in the first issue. Here we don't get any progress at all, and I hate that. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, I like a good title that's well written and tells us the hero's motivation stuff, but it sacrifices story progress in order to get to all of this, and I think that's just dumb, because usually with superhero comics people like action. By the way, artwork though, action scenes are good, but I just wish we knew a bit more about the villain. Justice League number 5. This issue tells readers how Lex Luthor became a villain again and how he formed the Legion of Doom. The interesting thing about this issue is how we have a temporary replacement creative team on it. We've got James Tynion IV and Doug Mahnke replacing Scott Snyder and Jorge Jimenez. This new temporary creative team is actually a good idea, because if Scott Snyder had just like rewritten this issue himself, it would feel more like filler, because we'd just be seeing sort of the same story but from Legion of Doom's perspective. But having a new temporary creative team allows not just the story to be told from a new perspective, but with a new voice too. And unfortunately though, I still think that's not. Unfortunately though, while I enjoyed it, I think some people will still see this as filler, even though we got some great explanations for why Luthor returned to villainy. We also get some cool scenes where he recruits Grodd and Sinestro, who so far have had like the most impact on the Justice League in this story so far. But still, people will probably judge it or skip it because they feel like it's filler. Although honestly, it doesn't really feel like that most of the time. Adventures of the Super Sons number 1. John Kent and Damian Wayne start off their summer vacation. Unfortunately, it's ruined by a gang of kids from space who look like children of DC villains. Alright, if you love the first Super Sons title, then you are going to love this series. It takes place, and in case you're wondering where it takes place in the whole continuity thing, it takes place right after the ending of the first Super Sons series, but before Brian Michael Bendis' Superman stories. Jonathan Kent was definitely the best thing about the DC Rebirth title to me. He was a fun new character, and I liked him a lot. However, since he's no longer around, and I'm very disappointed that he's not being featured in the Superman titles right now, So when this series was announced, and it's written by Peter Tomasi, who, by the way, wrote the Superman Rebirth title, and I love that series a lot, so I was super happy when they announced it. Also, since this is a maxi series, it's only going to be 12 issues. It's only going to be 12 issues long, and I think the whole summer vacation setting kind of gives us an idea for for how long the story will take place. It'll most likely be taking place over Jonathan and Damian's summer, and my guess is probably when the series starts off, Jonathan and Damian are at the same school, and maybe by the end of this series, when we get to issue 12 and the school year starts again, Damian might be going to another school. So that might, cause another reason why a split in their friendship. Because as far as we know, this might be the final Super Son story for a while. But nevertheless, it's a great opening arc. It has everything that you loved about the first Super Sons title is in here full force. So if you love the Super Sons, definitely pick this up. Batman, number 52. Bruce Wayne tries to sway the rest of the jury from changing their vote about Mr. Freeze's conviction. Tom King does an amazing job with Bruce's scenes in the courthouse. The way Bruce sort of explains and presents his evidence and presents his reasoning why he voted Mr. Freeze was guilty is very clever. It's pretty logical when you read it, and it honestly gives the reader a better idea about why Bruce and Batman is considered the world's greatest detective. Artwork-wise, there are some really great scenes where we do get some flashbacks into how Batman tracked down Mr. Freeze and the full fight between them. And what's interesting about this is that we see these scenes and the caption boxes on the pages are pretty much conversations Bruce has with some of the other jurors, which is a very clever move. And also, I really like how this is the first arc we get after what happened with Batman's wedding, because we could have had an arc that entirely focused on how Batman was feeling, but this is definitely a nice twist on that, and I think Tom King is still doing a fantastic job on the Batman title, and honestly, if you're not reading it, you definitely should. My last book, my pick of the week, is Mr. Miracle number 10. Scott Free is planning his son Jacob's first birthday party while struggling to make a decision about Darkseid's offer. Now, Darkseid's offer is basically dealing with the recent war between New Genesis and Apocalypse. Darkseid has agreed to... Last issue we saw a lengthy negotiation, but ultimately Darkseid rejected all of it and made Scott an offer that he would withdraw all his armies if Scott turns over custody of his son to Darkseid. I really like this series because of how well it makes Scott seem like a regular guy, but with superhero problems. For instance, there's a hilarious scene where Scott goes out to a bar with Booster Gold and Ted Kord, and when they leave, Scott orders a boom tube like he's ordering an Uber or Lyft. I also see Scott at one point asking advice regarding his decision with a party store cashier. All of this sort of tells me that Scott's sort of going through making a decision the way everyone else kind of does a major decision. And that's kind of how everyone else acts in real life. You talk to your friends about it, you talk to your wife about it, and sometimes if it still weighs on you, you bring it up to a random stranger you meet at checkout aisle. Hey, we've all done that. And all this leads up to the end of the issue where Scott tells Barda that he'll agree to Darkseid's offer, but he's only going to use this as an opportunity to try to kill Darkseid once and for all. I think this is a nice way to sort of set up a possible ending for the series, because we only have 2 issues left. I can't wait to read them. So far, this series has been spectacular. I've loved this new Mr. Miracle title. Tom King really brings a new twist to a more obscure DC character. Also, Mitch Gerrits does the artwork, and when Scott is out with Booster and Ted, he's wearing this shirt, this button-down that's kind of like his Mr. Miracle costume shirt, and if you go online or Twitter or something, you can probably find an image of it, but it's a really cool shirt, and I really hope that one day DC makes those shirts a reality and sells them to people, because I guarantee there are some fans out there that will buy them. And speaking of artwork, Nick Darrington, who did the cover, this is awesome. This is probably my favorite cover of the entire series. It just, look at it. It's dark. Even though Darkseid doesn't show up, it is a very terrifying and striking image. So overall, so that's why Mr. Miracle number 10 is my pick of the week. Thank you again for watching. Remember to stay subscribed and notified for whenever I upload a video. Also, you can follow me on Twitter because whenever I upload a new video, link is always posted on my Twitter feed. You can click on the link in the description below to get to my account and follow me. Also, remember, hit the bell icon. Thank you again for watching. I'm Spider-Man 1991 saying later days.